welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be making a video on super hyped up books that I feel aren't worth the hype. So I just want to put a disclaimer out there that these books are my opinion. If you enjoyed these books and you think they're worth the hype, that is great. I love to hear it. But for me personally, I just felt like they weren't worth the hype. So I have a list of 11 books, but I only own 3 of them. When I moved, I got rid of quite a few books. I'll link that video up above. Let's just get on with it. So the first book is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I felt this book was just very slow, not a lot happened, and it was not for me. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would based off all the hype. But basically this book is about a woman who tries to unalive herself, and there is a place between life and death called the Midnight Library, which is basically exactly what it sounds like, just a bunch of books that are what your life would have been if you just made one different decision. We go throughout the book basically seeing what her life would have been like if she just made different decisions. And the premise sounds fantastic. It just wasn't executed the best way that I felt. Like nothing super big happened. I felt like there was really no like plot, really. I don't know. It was just my opinion, like I said, but I felt like it was not worth the hype. The next book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was good. I gave it 4 stars, but is it worth the hype? No. This book follows a super famous woman named Evelyn Hugo, and she's like the fictional Judy Garland. She's had multiple husbands, and so this woman named Monique, and she's like a journalist, and I can't remember exactly how the situation comes about because I read this book many months ago, but basically Monique is seeked out by Evelyn Hugo to write an article on her, and Evelyn Hugo is like elderly. So Monique meets with Evelyn to figure out who her one true love is of her 7 husbands. So basically we go throughout the book hearing each love story and how each man came into her life, and it was a good book. I couldn't put it down, but I just felt like it didn't change my life like everyone said it would. And people were like, oh my god, it made me cry. I did not cry. I don't know. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, so that is why it is on this list. The next book is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. This book was the most popular book that I read last year, and quite frankly, I don't understand why it's so popular or why it's as hyped up as it is. It might just be me, but I am not a fan of Gillian Flynn's writing at all. I don't know, it was not for me. I read Sharp Objects first and thought maybe it was just the book. So then I gave Gone Girl a try, and I couldn't do it anymore. I gave up with her writing. She's not a bad author. She's actually a very good and successful author. I just can't get with the writing style. So because of that, that is why it is on this list. But basically the gist of it is that this woman goes missing and her husband's at fault. I believe, like I said, long time ago that I read this book, and also I didn't really care for it as much, so it didn't stick with me. But basically it's about a woman who goes missing and her husband's at fault, I think. Sorry, I don't know. Next is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I don't understand the hype with this book. I read it and was bored out of my mind. It's kind of similar to Gone Girl in the way of I couldn't get behind the writing style. The movie was good. Could it have been better? Yes, but the movie was good. I thought the movie was better than the book, but I also didn't enjoy the book, so I'm not really one to judge on that. But basically this book follows a woman who has, I think it's called agoraphobia, something. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but she's scared of the outside, and she's also like kind of cuckoo, and she has a drinking problem, which honestly was another reason why I can't stand that book, is because literally like I feel like every other sentence had something to do with drinking wine while being on medication, and I just couldn't take it anymore. But anyways, it follows a woman who never leaves her house because she's scared of the outside, so she people watches through her window, and she notices that one of her neighbors across the street is murdered. The premise sounds like it would be fantastic. I just felt like it wasn't executed very well because of the writing style. The next book is one that I strongly feel is not worth the hype. And anytime someone in any of the book groups that I'm in on Facebook posts a picture of it and says, "My next read, any thoughts?" I have a lot to say about it. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I just don't understand why this book is as hyped up as it is. I read this book, I think in like March of last year. I can't remember exactly when I read it. It was early last year, and it was when I couldn't give books low ratings. So I gave it 4 stars, but quite frankly, if I were to reread it, which I'm not, but if I were to reread it, I would not give it 4 stars. I probably wouldn't even give it 3 stars, maybe 3 stars. I don't know. Regardless, it just was not for me. I felt like it was kind of boring. I really did. When it would be time to read, I wouldn't want to pick it up because I just was not into it. It's a historical fiction fantasy kind of, but it follows a girl who basically prays to the demons at night or something along those lines, and they make her live forever, but she's forgotten. Like once she leaves their line of sight, they don't remember her. And so we go through this book over like 300 years of people not remembering her until she walks into a bookstore and this guy remembers her from coming in the previous day. And I just don't understand. People said it made them cry, and it didn't make me cry. Quite frankly, when I got to the end of it, I was glad to be done with the book. I definitely could have DNF'd, but back then if I started a book, I wanted to finish it. I'm not like that anymore, thank God. I couldn't DNF it and I couldn't get into it. And for me, it's one of those books that I stand strongly behind of it's too overhyped. It's not worth the hype. The next book is The Kite Runner. That is a book that I was instantly turned off from once I started reading it because my husband told me that he was required to read that book in English class in high school. And once he said that to me, I was just instantly turned off. I don't know why, but I feel like books that you're required to read for school, hardly any of them are intriguing to me, at least. I did like Of Mice and Men and The Lord of the Flies. Those were like okay. Would I read them for pleasure? No. So once I found out I was reading a required English book for pleasure, I was instantly turned off. I read it anyways, I finished it, and I don't know if it was just because I don't know much about the culture of where the book takes place, but it was boring. I don't know. I'm sorry, don't hate me. When I posted in a book group I'm in, way back when I bought it, everyone was like, "Oh, The Kite Runner is the best book I ever read. You'll love it." I didn't. Everyone said that I would love it, and I didn't. And then when I posted my reading wrap up, they asked how I felt about it, and I told them that I had an unpopular opinion. I didn't care for it. I don't even remember what that book is about because it did not stick with me. Next is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. That book, I searched far and wide for it. I wanted to read it so bad because everyone was talking about it when it came out on Book of the Month, which I didn't have at the time. So I searched far and wide for it without ordering it off of Amazon. So when I found it, I was really excited and read it right away, and I just did not understand why everyone enjoyed it so much. It was voted on Goodreads, I think, like the best thriller of 2021, and I do not know why. I do not know why. That book, it follows a woman whose husband disappears, and so it's up to her and her stepdaughter to figure out what happened to him. And he left her a note, I believe. But I just felt like I couldn't connect because I didn't know who this man was. The book starts out with him already missing, and so I couldn't connect because I didn't know who he was. Never had a single line in the story at the beginning, so I don't know. I was not about it. I couldn't get into it. So I just felt like that book was overhyped and not worth the hype at all. The next book not worth the hype at all is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. She has some fantastic books, but I just felt like this was not it. I gave this book 3 stars. It wasn't the worst book I've ever read, but was it worth all the hype? No. This book follows one of the husbands in The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Follows Mick Riva's 4 kids. There's just a lot of characters to follow in this book because you got the 4 kids, and then you got all their friends, and you got family, and it's just, there's a lot of characters to remember. So because of that, I felt like I couldn't really connect to any of the characters because I was reading about so many all at once that I'm like, oh my god, I was so flustered. Like what character is supposed to be my favorite in this book, because I can't keep up with how many characters we have going in this book. And I just felt like the plot, like nothing big really happened. I don't know what else to say about it. I just was not the biggest fan of this book. I'm keeping it because it's a beautiful book, but is it worth the hype? No. Next is another book that was voted Goodreads best book in 2021 for the horror section, which is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. That book bites. I don't know. It was boring. Basically, it follows women who were survivors of very traumatic events. And so they all come together for a support group, and then one of the women goes missing or dies or something. I can't exactly remember what happens. It also is very similar to Final Girls by Raelee Sager, which I didn't love that book either, but it definitely was better. Anyways, I can't remember if the woman like goes missing or if she dies or something, and then then we spend the rest of the book trying to find her. And if I'm being honest with you, it didn't stick with me. I don't remember what happened, and it just, when I saw that it was voted Goodreads Choice Award for the horror section, I was really confused because that book was not good. I don't know why people voted for that. Anyways, not worth the hype. The next book that I don't think is worth the hype is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, I believe. I didn't care for that book because it was very political. I thought it was going to be more of a romance, and I was excited because it was going to be my first male-male romance, but it was so political and it was very unrealistic politics as it was. So anything that has to do with politics, like, I read for pleasure. Politics are like stressful things that I don't want to talk about. So when I'm trying to unwind, I don't want to be reading about things that I find stressful. So to have the book mostly be about politics rather than a romance really turned me off. I gave it 3 stars. It was not worth the hype at all. It wasn't even very steamy, which I was wanting, like a steamy romance and a male-male romance. My first one, I was excited. Totally disappointed me. Totally not worth the hype at all. And the last book I'm going to talk about is a book that I DNF'd last year and then gave it a second chance and finally finished it. That is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I don't understand why this book is as hyped up as it is. I really don't. The writing is so juvenile and honestly kind of gross. I couldn't get with it. I don't know if it's because it was written by a man. I've read plenty of male authors who didn't write characters like that, and I don't know. It was not a good book. Will I be reading his other book? I don't know. That one is also very highly rated and has good reviews, but is the writing style the same? Because if it is, I can't get with it. This book follows 2 men whose sons are married and they end up being murdered, and basically time has gone on and the police and investigators have marked the case as closed even though it's not solved. It's like a cold case. And so the dads take it in their own hands and decide to figure out what the heck happened to their boys. So we spend the book trying to figure out what happened to their boys, and it's very much a thriller. It very much is. It's just the writing that was gross to me, and I felt like even though it is a thriller, it wasn't as thrilling as I was hoping, and because of that I just didn't care for it. Storyline is good, the premise is good, storyline and premise is the same thing, whatever. It was a good premise, it just wasn't executed as I was hoping. So because of that, I don't think it's worth the hype. I did give this one 3.5 stars. So those are all the books that I feel are not worth the hype. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time I upload. Leave me a comment letting me know what overhyped book you feel is not worth the hype, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!